and they meet at the St. Botolph restaurant. Well, not club, excuse me, St. Botolph Club in Boston. And she's hoping that Dino, that she will get him drunk enough and that he will reveal where the paintings are. And she's willing to do this because she so much wants these paintings returned, particularly Vermeer's The Concert, because that was her brother Antonio's favorite. And he has passed away, and so she associates The Concert with Antonio. For those of you who haven't read it, I know some of you have. So she meets with Dino, and it doesn't turn out to be successful. So she decides to, she puts together, after her analysis of all of the stolen art, she puts together a working hypothesis that the mastermind, and she believes that it's a mastermind, reverberated to these particular paintings because of the tension between the dark and the light, what the Italians call the chiaroscuro. So her analysis is brought to the attention of the FBI, and they're sort of intrigued, and they are also sort of disbelieving. You know, who is this Italian-American art dealer in Boston? But they actually find a matching profile of the thief in their database. So they say, we better meet her. So they meet, she meets with them, and the thief, the person that they're now suspecting, lives in Medellin, Colombia. And they discover that she's fluent in Spanish, she's traveled to Colombia, she has contacts there, and they say, okay, we're gonna hire her, even though she's not trained. But we'll give her some, a 2-week crash course on FBI protocol, and we'll have her work with our best art crime person. So she goes off with him to Medellin. And Portia, we're going to go into the backstory a little bit. Portia and her brother Antonio had started analyzing paintings when they were in high school, college. He was in high school, she was in college. During the spring break, her father brought them to Madrid, and they went to the Prado. And they have this conversation about Velázquez's masterpiece. Antonio is an artist, by the way. So this is Las Meninas. It's iconic Velázquez. And, Antonio asked Portia, what do you think about Maria Teresa, the Infanta? There she is, 5 years old, in beautifully dressed, and she's surrounded by all these people. What do you think? Do you think she could be happy with all these people around her? And Portia says, no way. So Velázquez, they analyze the painting and the tension there between the dark and the light, but also all the characters, the interesting characters. So there are the two young women who were the maids of honor, the translation of Las Meninas, surrounding Maria Teresa. And then this is the court of Philip IV. So there's also, in the background, in the door, is the chamberlain for the queen. Velázquez was the royal painter for Philip IV. And he was given this studio. So here's little Maria Teresa, and there's the Chamberlain. Behind one of the maids of honor is her nanny, and next to that is a man who is like a guard, like a bodyguard. And then in the front is a dwarf, and next to him is what I call a naughty little boy who has his foot on the mastiff. So you can see that Velázquez has a sense of humor. I mean, he had this plum job and, as the royal court painter, and he even had the nerve to put himself in the painting. In the back are figures that are actually Philip IV and the Queen, and the Chamberlain to the right, last name happens to be Velázquez, so maybe he was a relative. But they began their analysis of these really fantastic paintings when they were quite young. So the robbery happens, and Portia, as she's a docent also in the museum, she's not just an art dealer, she is a docent at the museum, and she's called in by the Boston police with all the other docents, and they question them, and they ask her these stupid questions like, where were you on the night that this happened, you know, March 18th? And Portia says, I was in bed with my husband. And they didn't like that very much. So she's waiting to talk with them in the Spanish cloister. I know that quite a few of you have been to the Gardner Museum, so you know how exquisite a place it is. And the Sargent painting, which is embedded into the wall, is a perfect example of the tension between, it's a perfect chiaroscuro painting, the tension between dark and light. But in fact, thank goodness, this was not stolen. It was just too large, and you know, it would have taken like several people to steal it. So, Portia goes off with Julian Henderson, who's the head of the art crime team, and they go off to Medellin, Colombia, where Portia's role is to befriend the wife of Carlos Alfonso, who happens to be also the daughter of Don Pedro Martinez, who's the leading cartel dealer in town. And Carlos and Maria, his wife, also love art. Portia loves art, and they love art. And they go on their honeymoon to France, to Paris, and Carlos is so taken with this painting by Delacroix, you know, this painting of Liberté, who is this Grecian figure, this Grecian goddess figure in the center. And he's, you know, sitting in the Louvre where, you know, this is just a huge, huge painting. And he's just transported by it. And he's like also, you know, horrified by the dead bodies in the front. But in fact, this painting is to celebrate the revolution of 1830, which got rid of one king, I think it was Charles, and replaced it with Louis Philippe, his cousin, who was called a citizen king. But the revolution of 1830 was when the workers and the middle class got together to try and overthrow, it was after the original French Revolution, it was to try and make France even more democratic than it had been. So this painting by Delacroix shows the bourgeois guy with the top hat, and it shows the boy, the little boy with the pistols on the right, sort of a Les Miserables type of boy, and it really personifies the French revolutionary spirit. And Carlos, when he sees this painting, says, why can't we have that kind of revolution in Medellin? Because he was a barrio boy. He came from the poorest part of Medellin, and it was Maria's father who actually treated him like a son and brought him out of the barrio and then had him marry Maria, who was pregnant with someone else's child at the time. But Carlos, a part of Carlos is very idealistic, and he would like to see more equality in Medellin. At the same time, his success has completely gone to his head, and he feels entitled to certain things, like the Gardner paintings. So, but I wanted to introduce you to why Carlos reverberated and responded to the art that he decided to steal at the Gardner Museum. So this is the famous concert by Vermeer, Johannes Vermeer. And it's like, Isabella Gardner bought this painting in, I think it was 1892, at a French auction house. And she had been schooled, shall we say, by Bernard Berenson in Italian Renaissance art. And she had the nerve to go on her own with her husband to Paris to buy this painting. But what was interesting is that Vermeer was not really highly regarded at the time. It's just like Beethoven in his day was not highly regarded. In his time, it took Franz Liszt many, many years later to make Beethoven famous. So, but Isabella was really drawn to this. It wasn't Vermeer's name. She was drawn to this painting. She liked the woman on the right who has a metronome, and that's why she bought the painting. So when Antonio and Portia used to sit in front of this painting and talk about it, what they were intrigued with was not just the chiaroscuro, and for sure, Vermeer is the master of light and dark. I mean, the light coming through the window and falling on this woman at the harpsichord, on her skirt and on the floor, and then the dark in the foreground. But they were intrigued, who is this man? Why is his back to us? This man, the lute player, why is his back to us? And, Portia finally said, I think by having his back to us, it makes us focus on the two women and their relationship. So they would have these discussions about art, and that's one of the many reasons that Antonio loved this painting in particular. But part of why it was stolen is that there are only now something like 36 Vermeers in this world. I mean, I think there were at one point like 400, but who knows where they are, what happened to them. I mean, he was an interesting painter because he never left Delft. He was always in Delft. And, you know, whereas some of his contemporaries traveled to Rome to study, you know, ancient art. Anyway, this is the jewel, I think, that was stolen from the 13 pieces, although I think Rembrandt's Christ on the Sea of Galilee, which is his only known seascape, but it's really such a beautiful painting because, you know, they're in the middle of the sea, the boat is being pushed in every direction, there's a squall, they're going to, you know, they're going to drown, and Christ is so beatific and calming, and it's just a really moving, I think it's one of Rembrandt's most unusual and deeply moving paintings, and it definitely has the tension between dark and light. So, okay, so this is Botero, and Fernando Botero, and I put him in here. This is not, all the other paintings are discussed in the novel. These particular ones are not, but Botero is discussed. Medellin, he was born there, and he was very poor, and his father died when he was really young, and his uncle sent him to Spain to learn to be a bullfighter, which he never did. Instead, he drew bulls, and he's really known throughout, particularly in the United States, for his sculptures, but his paintings and drawings are what I find so amazing. So here is Marie Antoinette in downtown Medellin. You can see the red brick. You can see the rooftops, and you can see the narrow streets with Marie Antoinette, and she has this little bird that she's looking at. And it's just, I think he really caught her. I mean, you really know that this is the woman who said, let them eat cake. And he had such a great sense of humor, you know, as well as really being able to capture the true personality of whomever he was depicting. And he didn't just, you know, do drawings of famous people. He would have like a man on a horse, and the man would be so much larger than the horse. So, and there's Louis XIV, and he's, you know, dressed in all his finery and squeezed into the small space, and then you see in the background this old man or old woman, I can't really tell, who's staring at him. So Botero is definitely one of my favorite artists. So I'm going to end here. What Portia discovered, I mean, she and Julian Henderson, if you haven't read my book, you'll find how they were able to get the paintings back from Medellin to the Gardner Museum. And if only that were true, but Boston is still swirling with gossip about it. It's been 31 years, and they still haven't found the paintings, but someday they will. Thank you. So, any questions? And we have lots of cookies and water, and we hope you'll take advantage of that.
You're an art aficionado, you've been a gallerist, you know art, you've studied it your whole life. But talk to us a little bit about the art of the... By the way, are your dad's paintings in the book in color?
Yes.
In plates?
Yes.
Okay. talk to us about that art.
Oh,